and thank you for being here. I'd first like to thank Consulus for organizing and curating this year's edition of the Shape the World Summit. And the theme of creative change movements is extremely apt, because we live in a complex world where humanity and businesses are being challenged in unprecedented ways, and issues we face range from environmental, social, and governance-related challenges, uncertain markets, and implications for political and social spheres. I'd like to commend all of you for investing your precious time to come together at this event, to learn and share ideas with each other on how to ignite positive change so as to make our world a more inclusive and better society. And through today's discussions, we have witnessed how cause, vision, trust, and the competence to pivot are key ingredients to enabling meaningful and lasting impact. Now, these concepts resonate deeply with me, and I hope to share some perspectives of my experiences from having served in both the public and private sectors. We must always remember that while we must pivot as circumstances change, how we pivot must always be guided by our purpose, why we do what we do. And purpose is our North Star, and what is that purpose? Now, the late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew once said, "My business is the people's happiness." This simple and yet profound statement, which Mr. Lee made in a 1965 speech before Singapore became independent, defined the clear cause of Singapore's founding leaders. It is our purpose. And do you know that happiness of the people appears in the Proclamation of Independence on 9th August 1965. The word happiness is also enshrined in our national pledge. So from time to time, I ask fellow Singaporeans that we recite the national pledge very often, but do we ever sit back to reflect what we are pledging? Now, in my work in the public and private sectors, I found the purpose to be so relevant to what I need to do. We have come a long way, but in the face of an increasingly complex and uncertain world, what does the business of happiness involve these days? Well, I believe it is enabled firstly by a vision of a better world. And this vision comprises three aspirations: a harmonious society, a prosperous economy, and a clean and beautiful planet. Now, first, a harmonious society is one that is built on a culture of trust and based on the principles of mutual respect, kindness, and peace. The early 1960s were turbulent times for Singapore. While we had always been a multiracial and multi-religious society, we weren't united as a nation. There were tensions and distrust between different communities. 1964 alone saw 2 instances of racial riots, each creating painful lessons. It was clear that racial harmony and social cohesion were foundational to fostering trust, and this cannot be left to chance. The People's Association of PA was thus established to create a common national identity. They have built up an effective grassroots network to bridge all people regardless of race, language, or religion. And within the PA, we have more than 30,000 volunteers who constantly organize activities to bring people together, create opportunities for regular interaction of our people, of all races, language, and religion. In doing so, neighbors know that they share common aspirations for themselves and their children. Friendships develop, and when mutual help is extended, the bond of trust becomes stronger. Multiracialism has been at the heart of many of our national policies over the years. Clear examples include our intentional approach to education, housing, and national service. All our schools use a national curriculum, even if their sponsoring organizations are ethnic or religious based. We have state-run schools, but we have also schools run by different groups, some of them religious based. Our bilingual policy enables us to train up a workforce with English as the primary language of instruction and work. It also allows us to communicate, engage, and understand each other. Meanwhile, our mother tongue languages, Chinese, Malay, and Tamil, help strengthen a person's sense of cultural belonging and connect with wider communities across Asia and the world. And we draw on the values common to all religions. Today, unfortunately, religions are seen to be in conflict, and yet the fundamental of all religions are the same. And that is enshrined in the golden rule, which all religions ascribe to. And that golden rule in the Christian way of saying it is, do unto others what you would have them do unto you. If we all apply this rule, we will be a far happier world today. Now, as for housing, we implemented a racial quota for each HDB block and estate, aimed to broadly reflect Singapore's racial proportions. Now, for overseas visitors, HDB is housing built by the state, the Housing and Development Board. And 80% of Singaporeans live in HDB flats. Now, this measure of a racial quota encourages intermingling and mutual respect among races, which helps to prevent misunderstanding and distrust that can result in the formation of racial enclaves. I'd like to add that some years ago, there were riots in France by the Muslim part of France. And in every city, there were riots, except one, Marseille. Why? Because of the geography of the place. Everybody lived in high-rise apartments and had no choice but to live next to each other. And because they live next to each other, they interact with one another, they have forged mutual understanding of each other and mutual aspirations. So in Singapore, we are doing that, what in Marseille was naturally done. Now, needless to say, the way we are constructed facilitates the work of the volunteers in the People's Association. Now, in the same spirit, our armed forces, which is made up of mainly conscripts, or NSF, or NS men as we call them, offer a shared experience for men to serve the nation. So they spend about 2 years together in the training, and regardless of race, language, or religion, they do the same thing. They build friendships, and they come out of it with a clear understanding that each one has the same purpose of defending the nation. And in their interactions, they will also get to know each other well and also to know each other's aspirations and to know how similar it is from one to the other. So this coming together from all walks of life to play a part in achieving a common goal binds our people. Now, this may sound apparent to many Singaporeans here, but the world as we know is becoming more divided and polarized. We cannot take social cohesion for granted. It is the result of intentional efforts to build understanding and foster trust. We have seen how fragile societies can be if we neglect the obvious, but much needed work of building and preserving the social bonds. And so in Singapore, we are fortunate our founding leaders set up the People's Association and mobilized, well, I won't say an army, but battalions of volunteers, 30,000 strong, who organize activities week after week to bring people together. The second aspiration is for a prosperous economy. If our goal is to achieve collective happiness, a prosperous economy must mean more than just businesses making large profits. In fact, I submit to you that maximizing profits cannot be an end in itself. Businesses cannot succeed unless societies thrive. To this end, businesses must go beyond shareholder capitalism to serve the interests of all their stakeholders. And this includes employees, vendors, customers, and the community at large. Should businesses fail to embrace stakeholder capitalism, they may risk losing their social license to operate. Therefore, businesses exist to improve lives, address the needs of people, overcome inconveniences, and solve problems. Those which can do so effectively and efficiently will earn sustainable profits. So a prosperous economy is ultimately driven by such businesses, and this thinking is not new. The founder of Panasonic, previously known as Matsushita Corporation, Mr. Konosuke Matsushita said, "Some people think that the purpose of an enterprise is to make profit. Indeed, profit is indispensable for conducting proper enterprise activities. However, profit in itself is not the ultimate goal of an enterprise. More basic is the effort to improve human life through enterprise management. Profit becomes important and necessary only to better pursue this basic mission." Now, in an election rally way back in 1959, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew said, "It is our duty to see that the worker gets a fair return for his labor, without which capital is barren and fruitless. The wealth and prosperity which labor produces must be shared in wages, medical, health, holiday, and other benefits, and in good working conditions." 10 years later, while addressing the unions, he reaffirmed this commitment. Developing the economy, increasing productivity, increasing returns, this makes sense only when fair play and fair shares make it worth everyone's while to put in his share of effort for group survival and group prosperity. So very wise words. What drives business? I think the better question is, who drives business? It is the workers who are the backbone of a prosperous economy, enabling it to deliver sustainable growth and security while ensuring competitiveness. Success lies not just in the personal ability to pivot. As leaders and change makers, we must consider how we can mobilize our workforce and advance skill sets to help others pivot in today's fast-paced world. We need this agility and adaptability to both employers and workers. In Singapore, we have established the practice of tripartism, a partnership among unions, employers, and the government to maintain the resilience of our workforce. Workers care about giving themselves and their families a better life. But today, they also face the challenges of inflation and rising costs of living. So it is important to them that their wages this year should exceed last year's in real terms. And next year's should surpass this year's. Now, while we may not be able to fulfill this aspiration every year, it should be reflected as a trend in the long run. If it is not, workers lose hope, become anxious, creating an environment that breeds social unrest. And we see too much of this all around the world. That being said, real increases in wages can only be sustained through increasing productivity. What this means is that workforce upskilling and reskilling should be among the top priorities of any tripartite partnership. Now, for all this to work, once again, there must be a culture of trust. And trust is established only when relationships are nurtured carefully, with each party being honest and staying true to their end of the bargain. In the mid-1980s, Singapore fell into a sharp recession. I was in the trade unions at the time. While we agreed to a sharp wage cut, it was based on the understanding that when the economy recovered, employers would restore that cut. And they did. This was key to the trust in our working relationship with employers and government. We adopted the same approach to recover from the Asian financial crisis of 1997-98 and SARS in 2003. Each time the employers kept their end of the bargain, the trust that underpins our practice of tripartite cooperation became stronger. Now, as history has shown, the journey will not always be smooth sailing. But we know from experience that despite successive crises, successful tripartite arrangements that are built on trust will pull through and strengthen their mutual understanding and cooperation. I should add too that there is another principle that we adhere to that strengthens mutual trust in a multiracial society: meritocracy. Promotions and rewards to employees are based on merit and never on race or religion. Easy for us to say in Singapore because we practice it, but not so easy in many countries around the world. The sustainable happiness of workers and societies is closely intertwined with the state of the earth that we all lived in. After all, there are no returns on a dead planet. This brings me to the third aspiration on striving towards a clean and beautiful planet. Climate change is such an urgent, complex, and multifaceted challenge that none of us can do it alone. What we need is a collaborative effort from different stakeholders, including global business leaders, policymakers, investors, and civil society. One platform that convenes these stakeholders is Ecosperity, Temasek's sustainability engagement and advocacy platform. Temasek convened the first Ecosperity conference in 2014 during a period where the notion of sustainability was still relatively nascent. And in fact, when the issue was broached within Temasek, the response from the employees or my colleagues was, why? Why are we doing this? Well, now we know. Now, it was a time when the scientific community had just sounded the alarm on greenhouse gas emissions, causing an unprecedented acceleration of climate change with the release of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's fifth assessment report. The word ecosperity brings together ecology and prosperity, reflecting our belief that doing good and doing well can, and indeed must, go together. This was inspired by Singapore's founding leaders' insistence on planting trees for a green Singapore, aimed to realize a vision of a nation that has fresh air and clean waters. Today, Singapore is one of the greenest cities in the world and respected as a city in a garden. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, I was in London for another conference, and I had the privilege to explain to people about the greening of China is driven by two primary factors. One, energy resilience or energy independence. The second, common prosperity. And common prosperity must mean also the right to enjoy clean air and clean water. I think the country still very much misunderstood, but the way they are going, the way they drive the transformation to green energy, I think has many lessons also for us if we look at it objectively. Now, Ecosperity is in the 10th year this year, and it has grown from a modest half-day conference into an extensive ecosystem of ideas and initiatives supported by many like-minded partners. It has generated greater awareness of climate change and accelerated transition efforts and solutions. Next year, it will be in May. Look out for it. You can participate in person or online. So there's much for us to do together to catalyze climate ambition into action. Now, achieving the three aspirations that I've mentioned is not an easy task, but that is why no man is an island. Through partnerships, we have the opportunity to achieve what was once thought to have been impossible. And take it from Singapore's story of transformation, from third world nation to first. And the same can be said about Temasek's journey of resilience and growth and purpose. Birthed in a pragmatic experiment of Singapore in her early years, Temasek took over an eclectic collection of some 35 companies from the Minister of Finance. In the 50 years since, what was formerly a passive local holding company has grown and branched across the globe as an active investor. Such progress was possible because Temasek had access to the right partnerships and networks throughout its history. It was really a collaborative effort spanning generations. We can channel this same spirit of collaboration, tapping on the strengths of each partner to do good together. For example, Philanthropy Asia Alliance, or PAA, is one of the initiatives under Temasek Trust, Temasek's philanthropic arm. With over 80 members and partners from all over the world, this alliance is focused on catalyzing collaborative philanthropy in Asia through dynamic multi-sector partnerships to tackle the most pressing social and environmental challenges of our time. PAA recently introduced its Communities Initiative, a funders collective co-developed with 5 like-minded community pioneers to address complex climate, health, and education challenges in holistic and interconnected ways. Together, they have committed 40 million Singapore dollars for a start and launched the first 3 communities targeting specific areas like ocean conservation, sustainable land use, as well as inclusive, high-quality education for all. In closing, I would like to share with you a video about the efforts of PAA, and may you be inspired to embark on your own journeys of change-making with your purpose guiding you. Thank you.